He did not break into homes. He did not stalk dark alleys. He did not leave blood or chaos behind him. He knocked across quiet American towns, suburban streets, highway rest stops, gas stations glowing under midnight rain. People remembered him as helpful, polite, normal. Someone who offered a ride, someone who fixed a flat tire, someone who listened. For years, no one questioned him, and women vanished. The roads were blamed. Bad luck was blamed. Victims blamed themselves for trusting. There were no screams, no witnesses, no urgency, just empty phones. Cars left behind, families waiting for calls that never came. Investigators chased shadows, patterns that never quite aligned. A presence felt everywhere but seen nowhere, until one small detail refused to stay quiet. A name that appeared twice, then 3 times. Always nearby, always helpful, always gone before anyone thought to look back. What kind of person can disappear in plain sight? How many lives can be destroyed by someone who never raises his voice? And how close does evil live to ordinary kindness? This is not a story about violence. This is a story about trust, and what happens when the wrong person earns it. The highway stretched through darkness like it had done every night before. Long empty roads, faint streetlights, occasional headlights passing without slowing down. Nothing about this place suggested danger. It was the kind of region people forgot as soon as they crossed it. Small towns, quiet suburbs, gas stations glowing at midnight. A place where ordinary lives unfolded without headlines or attention. In the early 2000s, life here moved at a steady, predictable pace. People worked long shifts. Parents drove children to school. Friends met after work and talked about bills and weekends. Nobody believed something was forming beneath the surface, and nobody imagined that the silence between towns was already hiding a pattern. Melissa Grant was 31 years old. She was a nurse who worked night shifts at a local hospital. She lived alone in a modest apartment close to the highway. Neighbors described her as polite and private. On the night she disappeared, she finished work shortly after midnight. Security cameras showed her leaving the building and walking toward her car. She never made it home. Her phone stopped responding. No witnesses came forward. Police assumed a personal decision or a temporary disappearance. The urgency faded quickly. Her family felt the absence immediately. Her sister called hospitals, shelters, and police departments across multiple counties. Days turned into weeks. Eventually, Melissa's car was found abandoned at a rest stop miles away. The keys were inside. Her purse was still on the seat. There were no signs of a struggle. The case slowed and quietly drifted into a stack of unresolved files. Months later, another person vanished. Eric Holloway was 26 years old. He worked construction and lived with friends near downtown. One night, he left a bar and decided to walk home. It was a short, familiar route. He never arrived. His phone last connected to a cell tower near a service road outside town. Police searched briefly and found nothing. No body, no witnesses. Another open case with no direction. To investigators, these disappearances seemed unrelated. Different genders, different lifestyles, different routines. There was no reason to link them. Each case stood alone. Because they stood alone, no one saw what was forming in the gaps between them. What authorities did not know was that someone had been watching routines carefully, learning patterns, understanding which roads emptied after midnight, which areas lacked cameras, which people could vanish without immediate attention. He was patient. He did not rush. He understood that being noticed was the only real danger. The family suffered quietly. Melissa's sister replayed conversations, searching for missed signs. Eric's parents drove his walking route again and again, hoping to see something they had overlooked. Time moved differently for them. For everyone else, it continued forward without pause. Another year passed. Then another disappearance. Then another. Each one separated by time and distance. Each one quietly filed away. Different departments handled different cases. Jurisdiction lines blurred responsibility. Detectives retired. New officers inherited folders without context. The man responsible remained invisible because he lived an ordinary life. He worked, paid bills. He spoke politely to coworkers. He had no criminal record, no history of violence. People described him as quiet and forgettable. That was his greatest protection. Did not see himself as cruel. He believed he was controlled and precise. He believed chaos came from mistakes, not intent. He followed news reports closely and took comfort in the lack of attention. When disappearances did not make headlines, he felt secure. When families begged for answers, he felt distant from the consequences. Years passed before anyone truly questioned the pattern. Detective Rachel Monroe transferred into the area with a reputation for patience. She reviewed old cases others avoided. While examining unresolved disappearances, she noticed similarities that had never been formally connected. The same types of roads, the same time windows, the same quiet locations. She began mapping places instead of people. Slowly a shape emerged, corridor of disappearances stretching across counties. When Rachel brought her findings forward, she met resistance. There was no physical evidence, no bodies, no witnesses. Resources were limited. Still, she continued. She re-interviewed families and asked about moments that once felt insignificant. A stranger offering help, a calm voice, sense of safety that now felt wrong. More than one family described the same experience. A man offering assistance when they were vulnerable, calm, reassuring, ordinary. Rachel realized something deeply unsettling. Whoever this was did not use force. He waited for opportunity. He relied on trust. And by the time anyone suspected a serial offender, the trail was already years cold. Somewhere nearby, the man listened to reports and watched investigators circle closer. He believed himself untouchable. He believed patience had made him invisible. But the next disappearance would not follow his rules. That single mistake would begin to unravel everything. The break did not come with sirens or headlines. It arrived quietly through survival. One person lived long enough to remember something small, something almost meaningless on its own, something that would have been dismissed if not for everything that came before. Her name was Angela Pierce. She was 29 years old and worked late shifts at a distribution warehouse outside town. One night, her car overheated on a service road just after midnight. No traffic, no nearby buildings, only darkness and the hum of insects. She called roadside assistance and waited inside her car with the windows cracked. That was when a vehicle slowed behind her. A man stepped out and approached slowly. He did not rush, did not raise his voice. He asked if she needed help. He said he lived nearby. He said he had tools. His tone was calm and steady, the kind of voice that made panic feel unnecessary. Angela almost accepted. Something stopped her. Not fear exactly. More like hesitation. She told him help was already on the way. He smiled and nodded and said he would wait with her. That was when she noticed how carefully he positioned himself. Not too close. Not too far. Always just outside her comfort zone. She locked her doors. The man stepped back. He did not argue. He did not show anger. He returned to his car and drove away slowly. Angela watched the taillights disappear into the dark. When help arrived, she was shaking but unharmed. She reported the encounter the next day. It was logged as suspicious but harmless. Another forgotten detail. Years later, Detective Rachel Monroe sat across from Angela during a follow-up interview. When Angela described the voice, Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. She had heard that description before. Calm, reassuring, patient. Rachel asked Angela to describe the vehicle. Dark-colored, older model, no front plate. She asked about the man's appearance. Angela struggled. Average height, plain face. Nothing memorable. But then she mentioned something unusual. The man had been wearing work gloves, clean, new, at midnight. While offering roadside help, Rachel went back to her board. She added Angela's location and time. The point landed directly within the corridor she had been tracking. The first time the pattern was not theoretical, it was behavioral. Rachel pushed harder. She requested old 911 logs, roadside assistance calls, tow truck records. She searched for incidents where people declined help and survived. Slowly, similar encounters surfaced. Different years, different towns, same calm approach. Supervisors could no longer dismiss it. A task force was formed quietly. No press, no public announcement. They feared tipping him off. They reviewed missing persons again, not by identity, but by circumstance. Night travel, isolated roads, mechanical issues, alcohol, fatigue. The picture sharpened. This was not random violence. This was selection. Meanwhile, the man adjusted. He sensed change. He noticed increased patrols, subtle, inconsistent, but present. He began altering routines, new roads, longer gaps. He believed distance would protect him. Then he made a mistake. A victim disappeared too close to a surveillance camera. The footage was poor, grainy, but it captured something critical. A dark vehicle pulling over, a man stepping out, his face unclear, but his posture familiar. Investigators released the image internally. Rachel stared at it for hours. The stance, stillness, the patience. It matched every description. They traced the vehicle type, narrowed it to a range of models, cross-referenced registrations near the corridor. Hundreds became dozens. Dozens became a handful. One name appeared twice, then 3 times. Each address sat near a disappearance location, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid pattern recognition. The man was ordinary on paper, employed. No arrests, no domestic complaints, no red flags. He had changed jobs frequently, always positions that allowed night work, mobility, access to roads. Surveillance began. They watched him live his life. Grocery shopping, gas stations, work shifts. Nothing overt, nothing illegal. But patterns emerged. He drove late. He lingered near rest stops. He slowed when cars were pulled over. Rachel felt the weight of it, knowing, watching, waiting for proof. Then one night, he pulled over behind a stranded vehicle. Undercover units moved in fast. Lights off. Radio silent. They watched as he approached the driver. Calm, measured, familiar. When officers stepped out, he froze. He did not run. He raised his hands slowly. His face showed surprise, not fear. As if he had not expected the pattern to catch up with him. As if invisibility had been a promise he believed in. During questioning, he denied everything. He spoke politely. He answered directly. He asked for a lawyer. His home search revealed gloves, maps, notes, but no bodies, no weapons, no clear proof. The case hung on the edge of collapse, till forensic analysts found fibers in his vehicle that matched clothing from one of the missing. A single strand, years old, was preserved by chance. But it was enough. As news broke, families felt a mix of relief and terror. The man had been real. The pattern had been real. Odds are still incomplete. Because when confronted with the evidence, the man said only one thing: "You found me too late." Investigators knew then that the truth would not come easily, that the most disturbing parts were still buried, and that understanding him would be as important as stopping him. The interrogation room was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. No ticking clock, no raised voices. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the slow breathing of the man seated at the table. He looked smaller now, less anonymous, but still controlled, still careful. Investigators had his name, his address, his vehicle, but they did not yet have his story, only when necessary, short answers. Neutral tone, he denied intent, denied violence, denied knowing the missing beyond brief encounters. He said he was trying to help people. That coincidence explained everything. That assumptions had filled the gaps where evidence was thin. Rachel Monroe listened without interrupting. She had learned that silence unsettled him more than accusation. He needed structure. He needed control. Silence took that away. While he sat in custody, the task force turned backward, not forward. They stopped asking what he had done recently and began asking when it had started. Employment records revealed a pattern. He had moved frequently in his 20s. Different states, different towns, always near highways, always working nights, warehouses, maintenance, delivery routes. Jobs that allowed movement without scrutiny. Rachel requested missing persons reports from every region where he had lived, not just the years they suspected. All of them. The results were unsettling. Disappearances appeared earlier than expected. Scattered across states, too few in each location to raise alarms. Students, travelers, night workers. People whose absence could be explained away. People who slipped quietly out of notice. The timeline stretched backward nearly a decade. Investigators realized the man had refined his approach over years. Early encounters were messier, less controlled. Reports mentioned raised voices, arguments, fear. Later cases showed restraint, patience, precision, he had learned. Psychologists were brought in. They described a personality driven not by rage but by order. He did not seek chaos. He sought predictability. He chose victims who would not fight, who would trust, who would comply. The man was confronted with the expanded timeline, the earlier cases, the names, the places. For the first time, something shifted behind his eyes, corrected them, said it began earlier. Rachel felt the room tighten. He described a moment years ago when he had offered help to a stranger who laughed at him, dismissed him, walked away. He described the humiliation, the realization that trust was power, and power could be taken quietly. That night he followed. He said he only wanted to talk, only wanted to be heard. But something inside him changed when the person did not resist, when control felt effortless. He did not describe violence. He did not need to. The room understood. Search teams were dispatched to locations he mentioned indirectly. Forest edges, drainage sites, abandoned service roads. Places chosen because no one lingered there. Places that erased evidence slowly. They found remains. Not all, but enough. Each recovery brought closure to one family and reopened wounds for another. Names were confirmed, timelines adjusted, the scope widened. The media learned fragments. Headlines shifted from suspect to serial killer. The region reeled. People questioned every late-night stop, every memory of kindness from a stranger. Rachel struggled with the weight of it. She attended notifications, watched parents collapse, watched siblings cling to details as if information itself could heal them. The man watched the news from his cell. He requested transcripts, asked questions about how cases were being described. He corrected inaccuracies calmly, as if accuracy mattered more than remorse. During one session, he said something that stayed with Rachel. He said people misunderstand monsters, that monsters are loud and reckless. He said real danger is quiet, polite, patient. He said no one suspects the man who offers help. Investigators believed they had uncovered the full extent. Then another discrepancy appeared. One disappearance did not fit. The victim had been reported missing years before the first confirmed case. The location did not align perfectly. The circumstances were different, but the name appeared in the man's employment region at the time. When confronted, he shook his head. He said that one did not belong to him. Rachel pressed. She believed he was lying, but his reaction was different, not defensive, not evasive. He was almost offended. He said someone else had learned the same lesson. The room went silent. Investigators rechecked the file. Another similar disappearance nearby, same year. Different suspect briefly considered, then dismissed. The possibility unsettled everyone. Had someone been watching him, learning from him, mirroring him? The task force reopened those cases. Patterns overlapped, but did not align fully. The realization was chilling. The corridor had been shared. Rachel understood then that stopping one man did not end the threat. It only revealed how long invisibility could last. As the case moved toward trial, the man became less cooperative. He withdrew, spoke rarely. The control he once held had slipped beyond his reach. But before silence returned completely, he asked Rachel one final question. He asked if anyone remembered the ones who trusted him willingly. Rachel did not answer, because trust had been the weapon. Remembering that was the hardest part of all. The final location was not dramatic. There were no cliffs, no abandoned buildings, no signs warning people to stay away. It was a narrow strip of land beside an old service road, overgrown and overlooked, a place drivers passed every day without noticing. The kind of place chosen not for secrecy, but for how ordinary it was. When the man finally spoke again, it was not to confess out of guilt, it was to correct the record. He described the place in careful fragments, the curve of the road, the drainage ditch, the sound of traffic overhead. He spoke as if recalling a routine task, not an ending. Search teams followed his instructions precisely. They found what he said they would. The remains belonged to a woman whose disappearance had never made headlines. No vigils, no national coverage, just a brief police report, and a family that had waited years for an answer that never came. Until now. Rachel stood at the edge of the site as recovery crews worked. She felt no sense of victory. Only a quiet finality. This was not closure, it was punctuation. The trial began months later. The courtroom was filled every day. Reporters lined the hallways. Families sat behind the prosecution, holding photographs that had aged alongside their grief. The man sat at the defense table, expression neutral, hands folded, listening as if the story being told belonged to someone else. Experts testified about patterns, about psychology, about how predators adapt and refine. They explained how kindness can be rehearsed, how trust can be engineered. The jury listened, silent and unmoving. When victims' families spoke, the room changed. They did not describe fear. They described absence, empty bedrooms, unanswered phones, holidays that never felt the same. They spoke of people who had believed the world was mostly safe. People who had accepted help without suspicion. The man did not look at them. When he was given the opportunity to speak, he declined. No apology, no explanation. Nothing left to correct. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Multiple life sentences. No possibility of release. The judge spoke firmly, carefully, as if language itself needed to be restrained in the presence of what had been done. As he was led away, the man finally looked up. His eyes passed over the courtroom, not searching for forgiveness, not seeking connection, just observing. Afterward, the world moved on the way it always does. News cycles shifted, stories faded. Another name entered the long list of those society labels and then forgets. But for the families, time did not reset. It simply continued. Rachel returned to her office. The case files were boxed and archived, evidence sealed, timelines finalized. On paper, the story was complete. But some nights, she still thought about what he had said. That real danger is quiet. She noticed how often people accepted help without question. How easy it was to trust someone who asked for nothing in return. How thin the line was between kindness and vulnerability. The cases he hinted at the possibility of someone else were never fully resolved. Investigators followed leads, reopened files, compared patterns. Nothing conclusive emerged. Maybe he had lied, maybe he hadn't. That uncertainty lingered, because the most unsettling truth was not how many victims there were. It was how long he had gone unnoticed, how many times he had blended into crowds, how many doors had opened simply because he knocked politely. Years later, a memorial was built quietly for the victims whose names had once been scattered across reports and rumors. No grand ceremony, just a place to remember. For those who knew the full story, one lesson remained unspoken but understood. Evil does not always arrive screaming. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it offers help. And by the time you realize what it is, it has already passed through unnoticed.